and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show about Indians from tribes and stuff that you've never heard of. So stick around. And with my co-host David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers, telling you a great story tonight. Welcome to the show. Welcome.
And welcome. It's the Soul Tribe. And we welcome you as always with the grace of the great Creator. And we continue to pray that you will learn to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the blessings from the universe and from the Creator. And we do have an interesting story tonight called White Hawk the Lazy. So that'll be later on, and back to you, Robert. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you on Tuesdays, and sometimes we run a little late and we're a little frantic for a moment or two, but we settle right down. So thank y'all for coming.
Well, and that's the thing is, sometimes we're a little slow or whatever, but this is our 144th show, and we're going to continue on with 145 next week. Go bigger.
How about that? 144.
Yep. And it's going to always gets better every single time that we do a show. So to start off with, we got lots of stuff going on. I hope you're all enjoying the summer coming into the fall. Happy 144th. Yes. And if you divide that by 12, guess what? It's 144. It means that's some special number, isn't it?
Yeah, because 12 times 12 is 144.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, there's all kinds of things that go with that 144. So anyway, it's all some kind of cool number. It's a number in the Bible of all the, he's 144. Anyway.
And we made it.
That's right. We are on top of things. And anyway, I got a good thing about this chief guy I never ever actually heard of before. But we're going to talk about the 5 nations. Yeah, Scotty Boy says Mr. Robert and Mr. David, and then he says religion something. That's right. Try to not do the religion thing as much as possible because religion leads you down a weird wandering path. And I think you should just follow your heart when it comes to your spiritual beliefs, because that will be the better path. Do you not agree?
Yep.
Yeah. Being indoctrinated. That's kind of how it goes. Nobody should be indoctrinated.
No, and the simple thing is that, the universe is all around us, and so is the Creator, and we are a part of it all. So it's simple to accept that and just have faith.
That's right. And the more I do these native shows, the more I realize that they were like that too. They kind of went, hey, go your own path. Never have I read one story where they said it was a religious war. They went in there to kill the other Indians because they didn't believe in what they believed in. You know what I mean? Never nothing like that. It was all because over land or territory, or just because they, you're an Oneida and he's a Seneca, and you're gonna be toast. We want your land, and that's what tonight's show is kind of all about. Is we want your land. And anyway, we want your land, and I'm finding more and more out. So this week I did a lot of studying, and everything from Lewis and Clark to the first people who came over here on the boat or whatever. I think Scotty Boyce does it for us. Maybe I don't want to work. Weird. That's odd. Yeah, can you hear me? Hear me now? Can you hear me?
You got something going on.
And I don't know what it is. Can you hear me?
That was clear.
I don't know what I did. Can you hear me now?
So far.
Okay. Skyboy says you're breaking up really badly. Yeah, nothing. Oh, there we go. Nothing seemed to want to work here. Okay. Okay. Why does this? Nothing wants to work. There we go. Okay, let's get started with this. And of course, I got to share. And I put my screen. Anyway, I got good stuff. But anyway, even Lewis and Clark, on their journey across America, get to the Pacific Ocean, they were set out to their big thing was to tell the natives that the Great White Father now owns the land that they live on. Did you know that?
Yeah.
I thought, so it's like some white guys show up, they bring a bunch of stuff, and they say, hey, we own the land. Sorry about that, but there'll be more of us coming. This isn't your land anymore. And that's what we're going to get down to tonight with this guy we're going to talk about as soon as I get back to this page. And he was a powerful chief back in the day. We're going to travel back to the early 1600s when the Europeans were just coming in. And we're going to talk about this guy, Biscar, an Adirondack champion. Now, you don't know where the Adirondacks lived. They lived where the Iroquois lived, and they kind of battled back and forth. But somewhere along the line, the Adirondacks, they took over and kicked the Iroquois to the curb and drove them all the way back to the Great Lakes. Right? And as they drove them back to the Great Lakes, and we can see this on this map here better, if I want to make my point. So this is the 5 nations. This was the Iroquois nation. And the Adirondacks, they lived over north, and they came and they drove them out all the way over to Lake Erie. And what happened was eventually they built up a bigger, better army. Somehow they became friends with the French or the British or somebody along the line. And then they went back in and won their land back, almost wiping out the Adirondacks to extinction, which seemed to be the thing. So let's take a time trip way back then. Let's get back off of this page because we don't need this one. Okay, so our hero, Biscar, he brought peace to the forest. From lip to lip story, the Sloan Trail repeated in dark lodges, the Algonquins and the longhouses of fierce Hurons, and among the great nuns and gaunt priests and the brave missions and the settlements upon the St. Lawrence River. That's where our story begins. It says here, he did not lack followers. In the early spring of 1645, scarce of 12 months after his famous Lone Scout, he took with him 6 other Christian Algonquin warriors and again hunt the Iroquois. Well, let's talk about his brave deeds and what he did. What happened is that they figured out, the Indians fighting each other, that little small groups of Indians attacking each other was better than a giant war force. So Biscar, he did a crazy thing, and he went out. And this was when it started. Was when the French settled in Canada in 1603. They found the Iroquois living in Montreal, where Montreal now stands. And they were at the war with the Adirondacks, a powerful tribe residing 300 miles from the Terois rivers. In consequence, the latter having treacherously murdered some of his young men, the previous to this date, the habits had been more agricultural. So these people were agricultural people. So they were at war. But this guy, Scarrett, made a name for himself. What did he do? He went by himself through the lands and he hunted the Iroquois down, making a legend of himself. And how did he do that? I think this is the guy. So we'll just, I don't know if this is the guy, but this is the picture they gave me of him. And what did he do? He went to their villages and he went by himself, and he would wait till nightfall. He was like the original Boogie. As the story goes, he waited till dark. They created their houses and were the whole taking their steps. And then he would retreat back.
You're breaking up bad.
Oh, I don't know.
You're
why.
talking real
okay.
bad. I think it's the internet. I don't think it's you, but
okay. I'm going to go out and come back in. Okay. Maybe that'll clear it up.
So, am I being choppy, or do I sound like a robot? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Our story for tonight, which I'm just going to give you a little tidbit, is White Hawk the Lazy. And White Hawk was known as the laziest boy in the tribe and in the neighborhood and in the, in the region and on the mountain. And when his father went out to work, he wouldn't go out and help him. Oh, shoot, no. That's just like, a young boy to not want to go help his father. And so this story is about that.
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it was just every once in a while, but you sounded like a robot.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Okay. No, try it. We'll see.
Okay, I see Savage Lee's in the house. Yeah. So anyway, back to our story. I better get my thing back up here. I was sharing the screen. So trying to eliminate all the things that might cause me to not have audio or video. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, a lot of times when it does that, it's the internet.
I know, and we got full moon tonight and solar storms going on, and all these things. It might be any of that stuff. So anyway, as we were going, we got Biscar, and he sneaks into the Indian villages one by one, and every night he would kill off a whole family in a longhouse. He'd kill them all, scalp them, and put his scalps in the bag and run into the woods. Eventually, the tribe, they were setting up guards, and they would set up guards around the village. And then he would walk around the village because he was fleet of foot, and he would wait till one of the guards fell asleep or was distracted, and he would kill the guard and go in the house and kill everybody. One day he killed one of the guards, and the guard made a noise, and everybody was on alert, and they chased him, but they didn't catch him because he was so fast, and he could outrun any warrior. Eventually, he would taunt the men that hunted him, and then at night while they slept, figuring they had the upper advantage because he was all by himself and they were together, he would come in and slay them all and take their scalps, adding to his bag of scalps. As he went in the winter too. Remember, in the winter they didn't tend to war in the winter, but he went in the winter and he wore his he was so creative that he would wear his snowshoes on backwards, so they would, if they were trailing him, they would trail him the wrong way. How inventive is that? Now you know where the movies get it all. Yeah. Anyway, actually, he would and the like come in and he'll scalp you. It is definitely the internet, man. It is definitely the internet tonight. I mean, it says I got good signal, but who knows? Anyhow, the point is that he was quite the guy. Made a good name for himself. So bitter were the Iroquois that all of the fall and the winter, Montreal had to be staged a siege. Tired of one-sided warfare, Biscar resolved to strike another blow. Yes, even in the snow, we talked about that. Even thickets along the banks and every curve in his course was likely to be an ambush. But the fearless Biscar party ascended clear to Lake Champlain itself. So he went up and down the coast, terrorizing everyone. Okay, so anyway, and it goes on and on about him here. And each come, they spoke Biscar and his party, let us eat in last time, for we will have to die instead of run. After they had eaten, they saw 2 canoes making straight for each of the island. Each canoe had 7 Iroquois. They counted up to 14. However, Biscar had the advantage of position. They hid in the bushes at a place for which one canoes were heading. At each chose a man for the first canoe, and he was a good director. Biscar took aim. Remember, they had guns from the English, and the volley of Algonquins were so deadly that every one of the 6 balls killed the Iroquois. The 7th warrior died overboard, escaped by swimming to another canoe. Now, here's the thing. This was, the Iroquois were coming after him and his men, right? But he was smart. So there's nowhere I could find that except in this book, this old book that I got. And it tells the real story, how they loaded their guns with 2 shells attached by a chain. And when they fired their guns with the 2 shells and the chain, it cut right through the canoes. And the natives, the Iroquois, fell out into the water, and Biscar and his men just rowed their canoe over and clubbed them all in the head as they died. They clubbed as many as they could, and when they got to shore, Biscar and his men, they rounded them all up and burnt them. How cruel! Yeah. So anyway, that is Biscar. Well, anyway, he was the champion of the Algonquins, but the Iroquois retreated.
So they made him a hero?
Yeah, he was a hero to the Algonquins because they were doing good. They drove all the Iroquois people all the way over to the lakes. Okay, so
he was like a Hercules.
Yes, he was.
In that he did a Herculean feat by going in and defeating these people, and so he was sort of like Hercules.
Yes, the Algonquin tribe was so powerful. Remember, okay, so they were up here by Montreal. They drove the Iroquois out of the Adirondack Mountains and down through here all the way over to, I can't find it on here, Lake Erie. And you can see Lake Erie over here somewhere. If I can find it. A lot of these old maps are nice, but they really don't show things very good. If I got a better map. Hard to find a good map. Okay, here, this is a better one. So Lake Erie. Now, along Lake Erie lived a group of Indians named the Erie Indians, right? And along with another group, and if I can find the name of this group real quick, the Iroquois killed them all off. They made the Erie Indians extinct, literally. They killed them all off, took their land. And somehow or another, the Iroquois, they either got more guns, they buddied up with the French or the English, one or the other, but somehow or another, they became a powerful nation and went on the attack. Okay? And they went on an attack with this guy, Ragula, I guess it's called. Weird name, but that's who he is.
How long did it take them?
Not long, about 50 years.
Oh, well, that's longer than I thought, but okay.
Yeah, about 50 years, and they were driving them all back, and the Iroquois came back into their lands again. They drove out the Algonquins and became a powerful people again. Okay, so yeah, this was so remember that was in the early 1600s, and then by the late 1600s, the Iroquois were a powerful nation again, and they were, driving everybody else out. And I'm trying to find about the different tribes. There's so many different tribes in here that I've never ever heard of. But anyway, so the United Tribes, and here's a good one for you. I didn't know that the tribes. How should I say this? We think of troops, right? Hundreds and hundreds of troops, and for in their population. But I'm going to read you a little bit part of this on how many troops they actually had, and I don't understand because I just didn't get this, and I was just amazed. But anyway, the Iroquois became a powerful nation. They owned everything up to Illinois, also west, and subdued with the Miamis and the Shawnees, the Nippercanations of the St. Lawrence fled to the Hudson Bay to avoid their fury. The borders of the Autias, says an historian, which were long, thickly people, became most deserted. The Mohawk was a name terror to the farthest tribes of New England, and through but one of the formidable people should appear for the moment on the hills of the Connecticut, Massachusetts, the village below would be an uproar of confusion and fear. Finally, they conquered the tribes of Virginia west of the Alleghenies and warred against the Catawbas, the Cherokees, and most of the nations of the South. The result of the series of conquests was that the five nations finally became entitled, or at least laid claim to, all the territory not sold to the English from the mouth of the Sorrel River and the south sides of the lake, Lake Erie and Ontario. Both sides of the Ohio falls into the Mississippi, and on the north side of these lakes, the whole tract between the Ottawa River and the Lake Huron. The historian Douglas estimates their territory at about 1,200 miles in length from north to south and about 700 to 800 miles wide, from east to west. The most moderate account of their population we have seen was published by an agent of Virginia who held a conference in Albany with their chiefs in 1677. This is what amazed me. All this land, they own 1,200 miles, 1,200 by 800 miles wide. So that's a pretty big territory to cover, right? The warriors then numbered as follows, and this is what blew me away. Mohawks, 300, Oneidas, 200, Okanagas, 350, Cayugas, 300, and Senecas, 1,000. A total of 2,150 warriors. Can you just believe that? 2,150 warriors basically conquered that big of an area, destroying all the tribes and chasing them out of their land. Go figure, right?
Yeah, well, that would tend to make me believe that the numbers within those other tribes weren't that many.
That's true. You bring up a good thing.
And that they were very ill prepared to, conduct any type of warfare.
Well, this makes good sense. This is why the English, when they came in, didn't see them as a big, huge threat, because you only got 2,100 warriors. We're going to ship over 2,100 warriors in like a day in a couple of ships. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We got guns. You got bow and arrows. Okay, so here, as you go on, it says this would make the whole population about 7,000. Even so late as the Revolutionary War, the British had their service according to the calculation of their own agents. And this again, Mohawks 300, Oneidas 150, Okanagas 300, Cayugas 230, and Senecas 400. And then, of course, to add, which must be added 200 Tucarosas, a tribe expelled from North Carolina in 1712 and received by the Five Nations to constitute a sixth member of the Confederacy. We must also add 220 warriors who adhered to the United States. The whole number actually engaged in the contest would then amount to 1,800. The Five Nations entered into a peace treaty with the Dutch soon after their settlement in New York. The treaty with the English subsequently on the same terms, and the memorable engagement remained violate to more than a century during all the revolutions and manifestations of the French and English governments on either side. The former of these people, they were often at war. Well, so there you go. They were warring, with these people constantly, and then they made the Five Nations in the 60s, and they really didn't have that many troops. If this is the record of what they had, it isn't that much, is it?
Well, can I be the stick in the mud? I was sitting here as you were rattling off the numbers within the different tribes, and I'm like, so who was counting?
Yeah.
Where were they counting? Was it at a meeting? Was it a powwow, a summit, a gathering? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Was the person doing the counting, were they asking chiefs from the different nations, hey, how many you got? Oh, we got about 300, you know what I mean? So how did they know that that's all there was? Because that's one hell of a large area. Yeah. And, there could be a whole tribe of folks sitting somewhere and they wouldn't even know they was there, So I'm me, I always have a tendency to ask questions about how did they know how many there really were, Oh, there was only 300 Mohawk. Oh, really? Are you sure? Just saying.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, no, I agree. Even if you doubled or tripled that number, it's still not much. You know what I'm saying? Even if you double it or triple it, it's still a very small number.
That's very true. And having listened to the numbers, I would dare say that there was probably twice as many. Yeah. For whatever they recorded, there were probably twice as many stragglers out there in the, because the state of New York is a pretty good sized state. There are a lot of mountains, a lot of places to hide, and if they didn't get to certain places or whatever, how would they know that was all their numbers? So anyway.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, even if you just go by that, doesn't really, it wasn't like, oh, we got 50,000 troops sitting in the back or warriors or whatever. I mean, even if it was, it ain't even 10,000 guys you're talking about. So, like I said, it just blows my mind because I thought it would be a huge number. And I suppose,
I agree.
you know,
And here's something else, because later on, it seems like the tribes, there are a lot of men from tribes that show up to help out in other conflicts later on. And I scratch my head and go, where'd they come from?
yeah. Well, I know. It's
So
like there was,
I think that that's why they have miscounted in certain instances, because, you know, all of a sudden there's a bunch of warriors and you go, where'd these guys come from? In another story, well, if they killed them down to 60 and then, you know, 10 years later there's 300 of them, you know, that's hard to believe. They had to have been come from somewhere, or they were other Indians or something. You know what I mean?
I do. I totally get that. Like I said, it's I don't know. That's why I brought it up, because it's a good question, and it really is. So now we got Gragula.
So wait, to finish that up, to dear friends listening to this, anytime you hear numbers of Indians or something, or even of pioneers, from these old stories, you need to take the numbers with a grain of salt. Just saying.
It was just interesting because I never find things like this in, modern books. But these old books, they have these counts, and I think it's well worth mentioning because somebody recorded something on this order. And this book I'm getting it out of is Indian Biography, and it was printed in let me see here for a second. Indian Biography, it's called, printed in, I think it's the 1840s, but I'm not sure here. 1843. So this book, they're going back, like 100 years, literally. You got better records, I think, or better tales, because the newer stuff, as you can see by what I showed up on the screen here, they kind of skip over a lot. Like, yeah, he was the forest warrior kind of thing, making peace and doing these deeds, and they just skip over everything. They just kind of put their own spin on it and say, yeah, there you go, right?
Selective editing.
Yeah.
Because, and with history, they shouldn't do that.
Well, yeah, because they were talking about Biscar, and man, the story, it was talking about the story. I was really into this story, and the Frenchman. If I could just find that spot, I don't want to underline these things in this old book because it just ruins the paper. Oh yeah, here. Where it goes on the coming year, one of the villages of the Five Nations, he concealed himself. And I'll just read a little bit of this. He concealed himself until night and then entered the cabin. This could be stuff of like you would find in a Halloween story of, like Freddy Krueger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, for the Indians, this was the boogeyman.
Honestly, yeah, I know.
They didn't have that, but I suppose the rumor, you better hide it and keep one eye open, or Biscar will come and get you. So he hid outside. He entered the cabin while the inmates were fast asleep, murdered the whole family, and carried the scalps to his lurking place. You notice the lurking place, and the next day, the people of the village sought for the murderer, but in vain. He came out again at midnight and repeated his deed of blood. The third night, a watch was kept in every house, and Biscar was compelled to exercise more caution. But his purpose was not abandoned. He bundled up the scalps he had already taken to carry home with him as proof of his victory, and then stole warily from house to house until, at last, he discovered an Indian nodding at his post. This man he dispatched at a blow, but that blow alarmed the neighborhood, and he was forced immediately to fly for his life. Being, however, the fleetest Indian then alive, he was under no apprehension of danger from the chase. He suffered his pursuers and approached him from time to time, and then suddenly darted away. He was fleet of foot. From then, hopping in this manner to discourage as well as an escape them. When the evening came on, he hid himself, and his enemies stopped to rest, feeling no danger from a single enemy. And he, a fugitive, they even indulged themselves in sleeping. Biscar, who watched every movement, turned about, knocked every man of them on the head, and added their scalps to his bundle, and leisurely resumed his way. Now, is that a story or is that a story?
I mean, it sounds like Rambo, and Jackie Chan, and mixed together, and like here's this guy that just sneaks up on people and bonks them on the head, and wow.
Well, yeah, and remember, these Indians carried this war club. I showed you this picture. This is how he would have looked. He would have been there with his war club, and he would just clunk you in the head, and then he would take his knife out and scalp you, and then move on. He didn't care. He was there for whatever. But like I said, so that's what he did, all by himself, lurking in the dark, and running away and taunting his enemies.
Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, well, no wonder why he became a hero of his tribe. Where he came back, you come back with a scalp, you're like the hero. But he's coming back with a bag full. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking if there was 3 people in each, 3, 6, 9, 12, this guy had 50 scalps.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, just sort of counting through the story you were talking about, and how many people there, and there was a guard, and there was a this, and that's 1, 2, 3. Then by the time he got done his, blood spree, he had 50 scalps.
Exactly.
That's just strange.
Now we're going to move to a new guy. Now this guy is with the Iroquois. We'll read a little bit of this, and I'll tell you about him. Nobody likes me reading all the time anyway. So Gragahula, the Tale of an Indian Life. And this is a book. You can get it online, so look it up, people. I just like the name. It sounds crazy. Gragahula. Sounds creepy, but he was a proud warrior. Towards the close of the 6th year of the first settlement of the French in Canada, where they arrived sometime in the year 1603, the Indians of the Mohawk Nation, who formerly lived northward of the lake, now known as Lake Champlain, though they called by the Indians Collier's Lake, from the circumstance that Collier, one of the first settlers of the town of Shakashakni, was drowned in the waters while on his passage across to Canada. Okay, we're going to skip a little bit here. They waged war and driven to the south. They were located themselves on the Mohawk and Hudson rivers on Manhattan Island. Remember, the Dutch were just getting here and settling Manhattan Island. It was a big trade center. Here they entered into an alliance with the Oneidas, Cayugas, and the Senecas, who lived at the south and the southwest of these regions, and to the east of Lake Ontario. Hence, they have been called the Confederated Tribes, or the Indians of the 5 Nations. Strength by alliance. Remember, we read about Hiawatha, and Hiawatha said, join and make an alliance before these conquering people come. So anyway, anyway, among the first adventures to the Netherlands and Sungus Dutchman came Collier, who settled a small town before stated called by the Indians Chekatida by the French, and Collier Caspar Lansing, an early friend of Collier, reduced to circumstances, his only son, Diedrich, then about 2 years old, had followed the fortunes to America. Okay, blah, blah, blah. His marriages, we're going to get to some better stuff here. I don't know where it says about him. Spring with the wilderness. Anyway, is it missing out on something here? Anyway, we got this guy, and he was the head chief. He was a Sechem, and he was going to make a treaty with the French or the British, one or the other here, as the leader of the Five Nations. The crafty, and then of course he made a big speech. Remember how Logan used to make speeches? Well, Logan was, another 50 years from this time. But anyway, Dragula was one of the first to make these speeches. And he's prized by style of expression. He contrasted strongly to the smooth and soft words of Lemaine and the priest. So, and he brought his group of people, and they were going to sign a treaty with the English, or the British, I should say. And him and his group came. They sat down, and Dragula got up as he sat in the council ring across from the British, and he walked around the council ring 5 or 6 times. He returned to his place, and then he spoke standing, while the governor, Lebert, remained in his elbow chair. I imagine an elbow chair is a chair with arms on it, I guess.
Yes.
Now, Dragula, he called the governor Yonandito. Nandino? Yeah, Yonandito. And he began addressing the governor by the title always given to the Canadian officer by the Five Nations, Yanido. He says, I honor you with my warriors, and with all my likewise honor you. Your interpreter has finished your speech. Now I begin mine. Okay, but to sum up the governor's speech, the governor basically said, lay down your arms. You are under our control. We're not going to war with you, but, we're in control of you now. And we're taking your land, right? Your land is now the English land. And he wasn't too happy with this.
Would any of us be happy with that?
No.
I mean, we don't know these white people from Adam. And they show up in the woods one day and go, hey, this belongs to us now.
Yeah.
And you shake your head and go, what'd you say?
Yep, exactly. So, anyway, moving on. He starts out. You must have believed when you left Quebec that the sun had burnt up all the forests, which render my country inaccessible. Because I should go back. He says, if you don't do what I say, we'll come and burn all your houses and your castles down, and we'll destroy all your people and make you extinct. That's the words of the governor. And he says that my houses are very inaccessible. The French or the lakes had so far overflown the banks, and that they had surrounded our castles, and that it was impossible for us to get out of them. Yes, surely you must have dreamed so. And he's taunting him now. And the curiosity of seeing so great a wonder had brought you so far. Now you are undeceived. I have warriors here present are to come and assure you that the Senecas, the Cayugas, and the Ogonagas, the Oneidas, and the Mohawks are yet alive. I thank you in their name for bringing back into their country the camulet. I don't know what camulet is, which your predecessor received from their hands. It was happy for you that you left underground and the murdering hatchet so often died in the blood of the French. Here, Yoganandu, I do not sleep. I have my eyes open. The sun, which enlightens me, discovers to me a great captain at the head of the company of soldiers who speaks as if he were dreaming. He says that he only came to the lake to smoke on the great Camulet with the Oganagas. But Gargula says that he sees the contrary, and it is to knock them on the head. If sickness had not weakened the arms of the French, I see Yanonangu raving at a camp of sick men whose lives the Great Spirit has saved by inflicting this sickness on them. Here, Ganangdu, our women had taken their clubs, our children and old men had carried their bows and arrows into the heart of your camp. If your warriors had not disarmed them and kept them back when your messenger came to our castles, it is done, and I have said it. So basically, I was making a plot, and we were going to kill you. Here, Yanganangu, we plundered none of the French but those that carried guns and powder and balls to the Twigwites and the Chickachicks, because those arms might have cost our lives. Herein we follow the examples of the Jesuits who break all the kegs of rum brought to our castles, lest the drunken Indians should knock them from our head, on the head. You know, so little tidbits of the story just lend to the ear that, you know, people were bringing alcohol. And of course, these Jesuits knew that if the Indians drank any alcohol, they go nuts and they could die very easily. We also can find out that these people were plundering the French for guns and stuff to wipe out these Twigwites, I guess it is, and the Chickachicks. So they wiped those tribes off the face of the earth. Go figure, right? Our warriors have beaver enough to pay for all the arms they have taken, and our old men are not afraid of the war. This belt preserves my words, meaning a wampum belt. So somebody had sewed a wampum belt with all the information on it that he was talking about. And he says, we carried the English into our lakes to trade there with the Utawas and the Portuguese, as the Adirondacks brought the French to our castles to carry on a trade which the English says is theirs. We are born free. We neither depend on Yanganangu nor Collier. Collier was the name they gave to the governor of New York, the Dutch guy. We may go where we please and carry with us whom we please and buy and sell what we please. If your allies be your slaves, use them such. Command them to receive no other but your people. This belt preserves my words. So what did you get out of that little bit? Does that pertain to the way we live today? I listen to that myself and I think, oh my, you know, this guy was saying we live free. And if you're an ally with somebody and they treat you as a slave, well, you know, command them to receive no other, you know. So basically it's saying, you want me to be your ally, but your slave ally, right? And yep. They got money by, you know, catching the beaver. So they have money to pay. They're using, remember we talked many times how they use beaver to pay for things.
Yep.
Eventually the beaver fell. Okay. Now, he says, we knocked the Twigwites and the Chickachicks on the head because they had cut down the trees of peace, which were the limits of our country. They have hunted beaver on our lands, meaning, you know, we know beaver is money. They have acted contrary to the customs of all Indians, for they left none of the beaver alive. They killed both male and female. They brought the Satans into their country to take part with them after they had considered ill design against us. We have done less than either the English or the French, and have usurped the lands of so many Indian nations and chased them from their own country. This belt preserves my words. So he's in these Chicka-Chicks. No wonder why they were at war with the Chicka-Chicks and the Twigweeds. They came into their land and they just didn't kill the beaver. They killed all the beavers, mothers and father beavers, and then they produced no more beavers. And that's not the Indian way.
That's right.
That is not. So anyway, he goes on there.
And apparently with and whatever was going on with the trees, I think they cut trees on a boundary line is what it sounds like.
Yeah. The trees of peach, which were the limits of our country. I suppose they must have made, I could see they probably made marks on a tree to,
Well, the limits of our country, it could have been a tree line.
Yep.
That just, and they cut them. So it's like, and when they cut the trees down, then there went the markers.
Yep. Pieces ended. We cut them trees down.
Yep. They cut the markers down.
Yeah, and exactly. Okay, so then he goes on. He says, "Here, Yondu, what I say is the voice of all 5 nations. Hear what they answer. Open your ears to what they speak. The Senecas, the Cayugas, the Algonangas, the Oneidas, the Mohawks say that when they buried the hatchet at Kerduki in the presence of your predecessor, in the middle of the fort, they planted the tree of peace." So back in the day, when the Indians made a treaty to lay down their arms, they would dig a hole and they would throw down their weapons into the hole and bury them and plant a tree on top of them in order to make peace. So if you're wondering what they're talking about, that's exactly what they did.
They bury the hatchet.
Yeah, hence the saying, bury the hatchet. That's the meaning of it. Okay. And anyway, okay, he says, "Here, Yokanangdu, take care for the future that so great a number of soldiers as appear there do not choke the tree of peace planted in so small a fort. It will be great loss after it had so easily taken root. You should stop its growth and prevent its covering your country and ours with its branches. I assure you, in the name of the 5 nations, that our warriors shall dance to the calumet of peace under leaves. They shall remain quiet in their mats and shall never dig up the hatchet till their brother, Yankanangdu or Collier, shall either jointly or separately endeavor to attack the country, which the Great Spirit has given our ancestors. This belt preserves my words." And again, he says, the Great Spirit gave us this land, and you come in and say it's our land. You got to obey to the great white king of the across the ocean. You know what I mean? That would be hard to accept,
and hard to comprehend.
Yes, it would be
from their standpoint. From the native standpoint, that's hard to comprehend. Now, here's something else.
Yeah.
The natives did not know that the French owned the land before the Americans did.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And apparently the French didn't tell the Indians much about it.
Exactly. They didn't. They just traded. They didn't really have a big presence in the States, which is something. So here you got this guy, and this is a good picture, trying to explain to the governor as he sat in his chair. He's given this speech to him. Here the orator paused for a moment and addressed himself to Monsieur Lemaine, who stood near him acting as an interpreter. Take courage, Auguste, he said. You have spirit. Speak. Explain my words. Forget nothing. Tell all that your brethren and friends say Yokanandu, your governor, by mouth of Gragula, who loves you and desires you to accept of his present of beaver and take part with me in a feast to which I invite you. This present of beaver is sent to Yanganangu on the part of the 5 nations. So he gave him a present of a bunch of beaver. So then when this language was explained to the governor, which I'm sure the governor was very disappointed, he quietly left the council and withdrew to his tent. Disappointed and much incensed, Gragula, on the other hand, feasted the French officers and then went home. Nothing more was ever heard of the treaty, and the French troops, who had been ordered out soon after, made the best of their way to their own habitations. The genuineness of the speech we have given above seems to be past dispute. It was recorded on the spot by an enlightened historian, Baron Lahan, from whom Colleran and other subsequent writers have borrowed it. So somebody was there and they inscribed it as they heard it. So that's why we have that speech. But after that speech and that treaty, Gragula pretty much disappeared from the earth. No more was written about him, and it goes on to say that is a proud courtesy, stinging and sarcasm, as the imaginary gives weight to the argument. An illustrious statesman and scholar has placed in the same rank as the celebrated speech of Logan. Remember, we were talking about Logan.
Yep.
But the fame of Gragula must, at all events, rest upon his effort, for history makes no mention of him subsequent to the Council of Kilahadge. So basically, after the speech, he went away, and who knows what happened to him. He might have just died or something. We don't really know. So
he could have been sabotaged.
He could have. He definitely could have. We don't know what ever happened to him afterwards. But then again, the disease was raging back then. These people, they were traveling, and the French and the English were coming in. And as you can see, they found a nice bay. They would settle down and do a bunch of trading with the Indians, and they brought diseases. Here's a perspective view of the Lake George, Ticonderoga. We know about that. We can't read the writing so good, so we'll just skip that. But we go on.
Can I add something?
Yes.
They in this segment here, you spoke about the Dutch.
Yes.
And when the Dutch came over, it was New Holland, New Amsterdam, know. And but you don't hear much about the Dutch. It's all the French, English, and Spanish, but you don't hear much about the Dutch. I just wanted to sort of bring that up. Although the Dutch when they did come over, they didn't necessarily conquer, but they occupied.
They did. They were more occupied. They were traders more or less than conquerors or anything else. They were mostly just traders. And they traded and, did a lot of that. And in New Amsterdam, New York. But eventually they gave way to the English and, so forth and so on. But anyway, you can see
but the Dutch weren't conquered like some other, other factions, The Dutch just sort of, they realized that, the English are going to, wipe us out if we put up any kind of a fight. So they just quietly mingled in and become part of the landscape rather than create a fuss. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think they were smart in that respect.
Yeah. I agree. And if you can see by this, is you get the Iroquois, Five Nations. This was 1650, like I said, pretty much as New York, you know, and up in the Lake Ontario, up in the Montreal, over to Lake Erie, and it was 1,200 miles by 700 or 800 miles wide. So this is a big chunk of land that they held. 1720 picture of it, yeah. But anyway, councils, fighting with other Indians. They did most of their travel with boats because they were on the lakes and they had all those rivers to go up and down. So they had all these birch bark canoes, as we talked about earlier. It was a good trading. Plus, I imagine they had tons of beaver, so they could be a wealthy nation. Lots of fishing. They did lots of fishing in that area. More canoes, a lot of canoes on this. And of course, the great orators. And of course, there we go. Gagula. Won't forget him. Remember, they lived in villages, would be, harvesting, and agriculture was one of their main things. Fishing, agriculture. Basically, I don't know if they had these kind of grass huts, but that's what the picture shows. And that is about what I got for that.
Well, what I was going to say, that with the grass huts, that painting, how old is the painting?
I don't know.
Because if the painting is like 1950s, then they might have made up the grass huts. If the painting is, turn of the century, then the grass huts might be really grass huts.
Yep, that is true. Like it says, it's hard to find pictures because a lot of times I'll find a picture of one Indian that I know to be true, and then they'll put a different label on it and call it some other Indian. And they're just trying to fool me, but not me. I know. Anyway, let's see.
After 144 shows, you've learned how to nitpick like a mouse through the different glean the information.
Yep, absolutely. Anyway, that's kind of my bit for the show. I hope y'all learned something. If you don't know who these people are, Gragagula or Biscar, that's good stories. Look them up, and you too can find out what they're all about. It was very interesting to read this. Like I said, I really enjoyed this little old book I got. And it really, like I said, there's a lot of important tips in there. Even in his speeches, you hear these things he's talking about, like, hey, this is what we did. We had to wipe these guys out because they were, getting balls and powder from, and they were fighting us and taking our beaver, and that's our money. And, we had to put a stop to that. I mean, what would any good leader do, right?
Yeah, they had to.
Yeah, and I don't blame them. I mean, that's their prerogative. I mean, come on.
Well, and especially if, a tribe had their designated hunting grounds, because that's like private property, even though they didn't own it, they managed it, and so if they worked a certain part of the forest, in their hunter gathering kind of thing, and they bumped into somebody else in their territory, I mean, what you doing in there, So, and depending on who they were and how much they knew that other party, the offending party, they would either drive him off the ground or kill him on the spot,
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing when you really get down to it, how they protected their stuff and became a big, powerful tribe, even though they were driven out at one point in time. So, I'm going to have to dig into this a little more to see, really, maybe I can find another chief in here that tells a better story of the whole thing, because still got another 50 or 100 years there to to scavenge up, figure out what happened between like the 1680s to the early 1700s or so. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because there's a, you know, this is the first time I've actually heard of these two guys. You know, have you ever heard of those two?
No, I don't. I want to say was it the French dude?
The first guy or the French dude? Uh, Yoganandu? You mean?
No, the other one.
Oh, Piscarat?
But yeah, him.
Yeah. Yeah. His story sounds very familiar.
I thought we talked about him before.
Yeah, I don't
with
know.
another tribe doing something. I thought, you know, we discussed, or his name came up before, Biscar.
Yeah,
I did.
I do remember a story that was very familiar to that, though. You know, so
I don't know if it was the same story, and I think it was him because from what I recall, Piscara had been involved in different things. So this was just one thing that he was involved in.
yep.
You know, and he was involved in other types of treaties and things. That's what I remember.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, I believe you.
But Piscara, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look him up a little more, and maybe next week I'll touch on it a little bit. So, but anyway, we got a story for you tonight, and it's a good one, right?
Yeah, and with all the stories that I have told and read over this being 144, there are similarities, and as I scanned through this story, I was like, you know, there's another story a year ago that sounded like this. So, but I didn't read this entire story. So, but as far as I know, I haven't seen any head chopping or anything like that. So, but this is White Hawk the Lazy. Give me a sec.
All right, it's all yours.
Okay, let me get something to drink.
Well, I think it'll be a great story. But yeah, you know, a lot of these stories do have reference, and it does sound like similar to another story. So who knows? These guys moved around, and you know.
Well, but you know, stories were traded. You know,
True.
I mean, and you know, one tribe that, you know, somebody would come along and they would go, you know, hey, have you heard any good stories? And they go, well, you know, my camp, they tell this story of, you know, White Hawk Lazy. And then he tells the story, and, you know, he's halfway across America or the continent, you know. And so then somebody hears that story and they adopt it and they twist it up just slightly, and it becomes their story. Then they rename it. So, but anyway, that's how a lot of things get started. So, anyway, here we go. Tonight's story is White Hawk the Lazy, and it still comes from the Indian and fairy tales, Snowbird, the Water Tiger, and so forth, by Margaret Compton in 1907. White Hawk the Lazy. White Hawk was known as the laziest boy in the tribe. When his father set his nets, even on the coldest days in winter, he had to do it alone, for White Hawk would never help him either to carry the net or to cut the ice. He neither hunted nor fished. He took no part in the games of the young men, and he refused to wait upon his parents until his name became a reproach. His father and mother were deeply grieved by his conduct, for they themselves were industrious and frugal. They did not, like many of their tribe, return from the wintering grounds to feast and be idle, but built themselves a lodge in the forest, where they laid store for the future. At last they determined to try to shame White Hawk out of his laziness. So one night, when he had refused to go fetch water for them, the father said, "Ah, my son, one who is afraid to go to the river after dark will never kill the redhead." Now, it was the ambition of every Indian boy to kill the redhead. Though his parents did not know it, White Hawk had always believed that he would accomplish it, and he often sat and thought of different ways in which it might be done, for he was strong, despite his laziness. He made no answer, but went at once to bed. The next morning, he asked his mother to make him some new moccasins of deerskin while he cut some arrows. He made only 4, which he put into a shabby quiver and laid beside his moccasins, ready to take with him in the morning. He rose before daylight, and without waking either his father or his mother, put on his moccasin, took his bow and quiver, and set out, determined to kill the redhead before he returned. He did not know which way to go, so as soon as it was light, he shot an arrow into the air and followed the direction of its flight. He traveled all day. Towards night, he was tired and hungry, for he had brought no food with him and found but a few acorns in the forest. To his surprise, he saw a fat deer with an arrow in its side lying across the path. It was the arrow he had shot that morning. He did not pull it out, but cut off as much meat as he wanted to eat and left the rest for the coyotes. He slept in a hollow tree all night. Early the next morning, he shot another arrow into the air to find out in what direction to go that day. And at night, he found another deer that had been pierced by his arrow. Thus it happened every day for 4 days. But as he had not withdrawn any of the arrows, on the 5th day he had none to use, and so was without food. He was very hungry, and for he had long since left the woods, and there were no nuts or berries on the prairie. He lay down, thinking he might as well die there as elsewhere, for he was suffering great pain from hunger. It was not long before he heard a hollow, rumbling sound that seemed to be underground. He stood up and, looking around, saw a broad, beaten path leading across the prairie. An old woman was walking along this path, thumping the ground with a stick at every step. He went nearer and was terribly frightened, for he discovered that she was a witch, known throughout the country as the little old woman who makes war. She wore a mantle made entirely of women's scalps. Her staff, which was a stout hickory stick, was ornamented with a string of toes and bills of birds of all kinds. At every stroke of the staff, they fluttered and sang, each in its own fashion, and the discord was horrible. White Hawk followed her, creeping along in the high grass so as to hide himself, until he saw her lodge, which was on the shore of the lake. She entered, took off her mantle, and shook it several times. At every shake, the scalps uttered loud shrieks of laughter, in which the old witch joined. Presently, she came out and, without seeming to look, walked directly up to White Hawk. She told him that she knew all about his determination to kill the redhead, and that she would help him. Many young men have thought about killing him, she said, but you are the only one who has set out to do it. She insisted upon his going to her lodge to spend the night, and he went, although he knew that he would not be able to sleep in such a place. She told him to lie down, and taking out a comb, began to comb his hair, which in a few moments seemed long and glossy, like a woman's. She tied it with a magic hair string and gave him a woman's dress of fine, soft skin, a necklace, and brooches of silver, and many strings of wampum. Then she painted his face red and yellow, not forgetting to put on some love powder. Last of all, she brought a silver bowl for him and slipped a blade of scented swordgrass into his girdle. She told him that Redhead lived on an island in the center of the lake, on the shore of which her lodge was built. On the morrow, White Hawk should go down to the water and begin dipping the silver bowl into the lake and drinking from it. The Indians who were with the redhead would see him and, supposing him to be a woman, would come over in their canoes, and each would wish to make her his wife. He was to say, "No, I will only marry the redhead, and he must bring his own canoe for me, for I have traveled a long way in order to be his wife." When the redhead should receive the news, he would cross in his canoe and take White Hawk to the island. The witch loaded him with presents to give in the event of a marriage, in which case he was to be on the watch for an opportunity to kill the redhead by cutting off his head with the spear of scented swordgrass. White Hawk rose next morning, put on the woman's garments that had been given to him, went down to the lake and began dipping water with a silver bowl. Presently, many canoes were put out from the island. They were driven swiftly to the spot where he stood, and the men strove with one another in offers of marriage. White Hawk acted as the witch told him a woman would under the circumstances. To all their entreaties, he replied, I have come a great way to see the redhead, who I am resolved to marry. If he wants me, let him come in his own canoe to take me to his wigwam. The message was taken to the redhead, who immediately crossed the lake in his canoe. As it neared the shore, White Hawk saw that its framework was of live rattlesnakes, who thrust out their heads and hissed and rattled as he stepped into the boat. The redhead spoke to them, and they quieted down, as dogs at the word of their master. When they landed, the redhead went straight to his wigwam, and the marriage was performed. Then a feast was spread, the presents were given, and White Hawk waited for his opportunity. By and by, Redhead's mother, who had been watching the bride closely, said to her husband, That is no woman our son has married. No woman ever looked out of her eyes like that. Her husband was very angry, and White Hawk, who had overheard the conversation, jumped up and said, I have been insulted, and by my husband's people. I cannot live here. I will return at once to my nation. And he ran out of the wigwam, followed by the guests and by Redhead, who motioned to them to leave him. White Hawk went down to the shore and made pretense of getting into a canoe. When the redhead laid a hand upon him and sorrowfully begged him to wait at least a little time, he turned back and sat down. When the redhead threw himself at his wife's feet and put his head into her lap. White Hawk lost not a moment in drawing out the blade of sword grass and cutting off his head at a single stroke. He then plunged into the water and swam across the lake with the head in his hand. He had scarcely reached the shore when he saw the redhead's followers come down with torches in search of him and his wife. He heard their shrieks when they found the headless body, and so lost no time in making his way to the witch's lodge, whither they would not be likely to follow him. The witch received him with great joy. She told him that he must give her a little piece of the scalp for herself, but he might take the rest home. He was anxious to return, so she gave him a partridge to offer the spirit of the earth in case he should meet him on the way. As White Hawk crossed the prairie, he heard a great rumbling and crackling sound, and the earth split and opened in front of him. He threw the partridge into the crack, and it was closed immediately, so that he passed over it in safety. On reaching home, he found that his parents had fasted and mourned for him as dead, for he had been gone a year. Many young men had come to them and had said, "See, I am your son," until when White Hawk did not return, they would not even look at him. He threw himself at their feet and told them that he had killed the redhead. They paid no attention to him. And the young man of the tribe to whom he repeated the story laughed in his face. He went outside the camp and brought back the head, for they knew that he would be admitted at once to the company of warriors for having rid them of so great an enemy. While they all wondered how one who was so lazy could have become so great a brave, he told them why he had acted as he did before he left the village. He was so strong that he had been afraid of breaking things, and so did not dare to touch them. He took hold of some fishing nets, and as he turned them over in his fingers, they snapped in many places. But now that he was a man, his strength would be useful to him and his tribe. He could clear the forest of fallen trees and carry some to the streams where he could throw them so that his people might go from one side to the other in safety. Therefore, he was not known as White Hawk the Lazy, but as the strong man. The end.
Good
I
story.
forgot there was some head cutting.
There was some head cutting. Can't be a good story if you don't have good head chopping every now and then. Oh
But
yeah.
see, they thought he was lazy all the whole time. But so at the end of the story, he goes back and he knows he's been um ostracized by his tribe, and he knows deep inside he's not really like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they picked on him and they called him a lazy no good. And it wasn't until he shot an arrow into the air and followed it that he came upon his fortune finally. And while he was gone, he did some thinking, I bet you. Doesn't say so in the story. But, so someone goes off and finds out that they do have a talent, that they can do things. So when he gets back home, before they get a chance to, ostracize him for being lazy, because they're asking, how can this guy do that, right? How could he, kill Redhead? How could he bring his head back? This lazy bum. And then he explains, and I bet you everybody in the tribe was like, oh man, shoot. Putting their head down, So, but anyway, I think there's a good moral in that story. Didn't say so, but that old adage of judging a book by its cover.
Yeah, I like the part with the arrow. The arrow part really got me. Was because sometimes, you know, you just don't know your path, and you just have to randomly, you know, shoot wherever you know, just jump on that truck or train or whatever and see where it heads you. And that's what he did. He just shot that arrow, and wherever it went, that's where he's going to go. And adventure awaits him somewhere along the line. And I think a lot of people, even nowadays, don't do that. They don't want to get out of their comfort zone. They just want to sit home and, you know, do little as possible, or just hang out with mom and dad, and they never move out of the house until, you know, they're forced to. And sometimes you just have to throw that random arrow out there and follow it wherever your heart leads you. Right?
Well, yeah. And here's the thing. As he picked up the bow and arrow, he had to face a direction.
Yep.
So in his facing north or south or whichever way he was facing, I know he shot the arrow in the air, but he was facing one of the directions. So he had already sort of made his own decision before he shot the arrow. You know what I mean? But he trusted himself to the Creator, to the Great Spirit. And so, which was already in him, he already knew which way to go. And so, you know, so he turned to whatever way he was going and shot the arrow. But then he followed it for whichever way it went. But to the point, though, he had already made his decision when he pointed that arrow into the sky. I'm going to go this way. You know what I mean?
Yep, that is true. And then that led him on this big adventure. And then when it brought him home, you know, and they just had to look at him like he was a hero. Like, holy cow, I can't believe he went out and did that. He made something of himself. Oh, no. You know what I mean?
Yep, and it doesn't say so. But what do we know about redheads?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, redheads are like trouble. You know, sometimes, or they're
yeah, but I mean, what would redhead be?
I don't know.
Giant.
Oh yeah, giants, redhead giants. Yeah, that I wasn't even thinking of that. I was thinking.
So because, you know, when he got home, they were like, you know, you killed you know, one of our greatest enemies. And so he went and killed the giant.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. Sorry. But yeah, you're right. The redheads were the giants. Yeah, see?
Yeah, because he didn't want to harm anybody else. You know, with all the other guys that were there and the other tribe, and while he was dressed as a woman and all that kind of stuff. So he wasn't there to harm anybody else. He really just wanted, you know, redhead. Yep. But in thinking of, you know, down through the stories, who had red heads back in the day, then that would be the giants.
Yeah, that makes sense. See those myths and legends, they go back, they have bits in there without telling you it was a giant. You see what I'm saying? Like we read once before a story about where the two kids went missing, and that was like a, you know, one of those 411 missing stories, like a Bigfoot came and took the children. But it didn't quite say that's what happened. It just said they went missing, you know, so forth and so on. Yeah. So, you know, hints to the fact that it was a giant without telling you it was a giant, right?
Yeah. But see, also, if in the tribe, you would have known who Redhead was.
Yes, because you already know the history part. Like you said.
Yeah, you already know who the character is. So in this story, you know, he's got to kill Redhead. So all the kids are going, he's going to kill the giant. He's going to kill the giant. You know, so, you know, so my imagination's going crazy tonight. I can see a bunch of children sitting around a fire, and grandfather is telling the story. You know what I mean? And they're whispering to each other, you know, he's dressing up like a woman. Oh my goodness, you know, can he fool the redhead? He's going to try to marry the giant. You know, I can hear, you know, the folks around the fire talking about it, you know.
Yeah. Well,
So, but
and that's
yeah,
it. Unlike today's children who just watch TV and it's all given to you. Back in the day when you had stories, you had to sit around, you had to use your imagination and your thought process in order to put the story together. You had to put it all in your head like a dream being told to you instead of, I'll just watch it on TV and oh boy, somebody else did it all for me. I don't even have to think. You know what I mean?
yes, and also you had to remember your history
Yeah.
because you had to remember, Coyote's not in this story, but you had to remember who Coyote was. You had to remember who Turtle was. You had to remember, who Redhead was.
Yeah.
And so that's why they would, But anyway, so yeah, um, to understand the stories, they had to remember their history, and who the different characters were, and we're reading the stories um, in a way without knowing who the characters are. Now, in some of the stories, in the last book that we had, it listed the characters, but in this one, it's the telling of the story, and the storyteller in this instance is retelling the story, and she's assuming that we know who the characters are
Mm-hmm.
if their characters don't come out in the story itself.
Yep. So what do we got for cards tonight?
Well, I'm in the middle of pulling them
Oh, there you go. I asked too soon.
because I was busy yapping at you earlier. And then we jumped right into the story, and I was like, "So I'm pulling cards right now I was shuffling them while I was making up stuff here a few minutes ago." So you know, that was my segue into shuffling. What the heck is he talking about, Margaret? Well, I don't know. It sounds like he's just filling up time, and it was, and it was. So we got 3 cards so far. That card was the horse card, and it's heads up. So have you felt any of these strange energies coming through there, Robert?
Oh, I think I have. I would say yes. There is there is strange energies coming through, especially lately. I can feel it.
Yeah, since we met last time, and
Mm-hmm.
there was some shenanigans going on last week, but this week, and we've had some honest to goodness strange energies coming out of the sun. I mean, today we were getting pelted by a CME that really shook the magnetosphere of the earth. And so since we're mostly water, you know, um, we should have felt like a shock wave, if you will, from how this thing came in because it nailed the earth. It was a powerful storm, and we got a partial eclipse of a full moon tonight.
Yeah,
So,
I off the hook says the eclipse has just ended. Uh, anyway, we didn't get to see it. Maybe I should have been out there with my camera.
so anyway, here's our cards for tonight. We've got antelope, which we haven't had in a while, upside down. Then wolf, which is right side up. Horse, which is right side up. And then coyote, which is upside down. So let me get to these, but those are the cards. and the order that they came in tonight. I know it was like earlier, and I was like, we were chatting, then I forgot to get the cards out and shuffle them. And next thing you know, I'm reading a story, and I can't do two things at one time like that.
Yep. I know how it goes. And we got everybody tuning in for the cards tonight.
Okay, so antelope is action. Run, antelope, teach me of action and its pace. Quickly, quickly, so I may run with grace. Antelope saw that the two-leggeds in ancient times were naked and hungry and in danger of extinction. The ancestors would soon vanish from Mother Earth if action were not taken. Now, what does that mean? The ancestors would soon vanish. You and I are ancestors, you know? And so the ancestors were the people, the first people. And they wouldn't be ancestors if they didn't survive. So, but anyway, Antelope took action and came to the council of the two-legged and says, "Great mystery has sent me to teach you a lesson. The lesson is to do. You have no need to be fearful if you know what to do, and then you do it," Antelope said. "If you are naked and cold, you should kill me and take my coat to keep you warm. It is my gift to you. Do it," said Antelope. "If you are hungry, you should kill me and take my flesh, for it will nourish you and make you strong. It is my gift to you. And it is a part of my evolution. It is my service. So do it." So in this, antelope is action. And antelope knew that humankind wouldn't survive the ice age. So human learned antelope's lesson well. And because of antelope, humans took proper action and survived to this present day. Now, in the contrary, which it's upside down, contrary antelope is a signal that you are not listening and not acting on the will of the Great Spirit. You may be taking more than your share. Antelope medicine, in the contrary, makes you crazy and quarrelsome. Well, some of us are feeling crazy. I don't know about the quarrelsome part. You will certainly be indecisive and not know what direction to turn. You might be lying to yourself and to others. Stop lying, even if you think it will get you off the hook. Contrary antelope will trip you at every turn. Quit being so conventional and following others all the time. Take your own authority. Let antelope's heart beat strong in you, and you will know the way. But as always, the message is do it. The fear of the unknown subsides once action has begun. The fear of the unknown subsides once action begins. I know that to be true. That is a true statement. That is a true sentence. If you sit around worrying about something and, well, I don't know, I don't know. But then once you get started, Normally, you can take you know what I'm hearing. This is what they're talking about. So, contrary antelope may also be telling you that a decision to start is now necessary. The main element in procrastination is lack of conviction. And there are many of us out here that are procrastinating. I'm one of them. To honor your chosen destiny is to honor your commitment to doing what you proclaim you are doing. Walking your talk is the essence of antelope people. Talking your walk is contrary to antelope. To write contrary antelope, have the desire to do something. The desire. Make the firm decision to begin that action and then do it. Coyote is next. So, action, do it. And the upside down means that you ain't been doing action. What number is that? 15. I can't remember what coyote's for. Haven't had coyote in a while. Oh, I'm sorry. This is wolf. Coyotes at the end. I'm sorry. Okay, we got wolf. So wolf is right side up. Wolf is the pathfinder, the forerunner of new ideas, who returns to the clan to teach and share medicine. Wolf takes one mate for life and is loyal like dog. If you were to keep company with wolves, you would find an enormous sense of family within the pack. In the great star nation, wolf is represented by the dog star Sirius, which legend tells us was the original home of our teachers in ancient times. Remember, aliens. Sirius was thought to be the home of the gods by the ancient Egyptians, the Dogon tribe, and others. The sense of wolf, the senses of wolf are very keen, and the moon is its power ally. So we got a full moon tonight, with a little bit of shading on the side, and here we got wolf howling at the moon, just like that picture. So that's interesting. We got the wolf tonight. The senses of wolf are very keen, and the moon is the power ally. The moon is the symbol for psychic energy. Now, we just had Antelope who says, do it, get started. And, it might be you're supposed to get started. We might have to with our psychic energies and to use our energies for, positive things. The unconscious holds the secrets of knowledge and wisdom. Baying at the moon may be an indication of wolf's desire to connect with new ideas which are just below the surface of just below the surface of consciousness. If you've drawn wolf card, you may be able to share your personal medicine with others, and your intuitive side may be that which guides you. It is in the sharing of great truths that the consciousness of humanity will attain new heights. The antelope gave his life to keep the ancestors alive, and the action is to do something. And so we need to use our consciousness to help humanity attain new heights, because right now is the time to do it, and we're all stuck in this mess. The next one is horse, and it's number 35. Going back and forth in the book. I'm pretty sure that horse is power. And I think we have had horse recently, now that I think about it. Yep. Horse is power. And horse was the only animal that was not indigenous to North America. So it made a big difference to the native folks, and so when they met horse and rode the horse, they understood what the meaning for the horse is, and that's power. Stealing horses as stealing power was a statement made frequently to historical Native America, and the reference to the esteemed role which horse played in the native cultures. Horse is the physical power and unearthly power. In shamanic practices throughout the world, horse enables the shamans to fly through the air and to reach heaven. Humanity made a great leap forward when horse was domesticated. Dreamwalker was a medicine man, and he was walking across the plains to the Arapaho Nation. He was going to heal. And he met Black Stallion, and Black Stallion offered him help, and he said, when I need it, I'll come get it. The same thing with Yellow Stallion and Red Stallion. And Dreamwalker was nearing his destination when White Stallion came to the front of the herd, and Dreamwalker mounted the White Stallion's back. White Stallion was the message carrier for all the other horses and represented wisdom in power. To heal Mother Earth, you have the knowledge through humility that you are an instrument of the Great Spirit. In wisdom, you understand that power is not given lightly, but awarded to those who are willing to carry responsibility in a balanced manner. In understanding the power of horse, you may see how to strive for a balanced medicine shield. True power is wisdom found in remembering your total journey, your total spiritual journey. So, wolf, howling at the moon, take action, get off your butt. And horse is giving you the power to do it. And the next one is coyote, which is number 13, lucky 13. Ooh, there's number 12, porcupine. And coyote is the trickster, of course. Coyote has many magical powers, but they do not always work in his favor. His own trickery fools him. He is the master trickster who tricks himself. No one is more astonished than Coyote at the outcome of his own tricks. Coyote is sacred. In the folly of his acts, we see our own foolishness. As Coyote moves from one disaster to the next, he refines the art of self-sabotage to sheer perfection. No one can blindly do themselves or to others what Coyote can do with grace, because he is the holy trickster. Coyote takes himself so seriously at times that he cannot see the obvious, like the steamroller that's about to run him over. Contained within trickster medicine is the humor of the ages. The cosmic joke is not just on ourselves, but on everyone else too. If they are following Coyote or have any kind of Coyote medicine. Now he's in the contrary position. If Coyote appears in the reverse position, you can be assured that he is going to be contrary and a pain in the backside. Oops. So we need to be careful and watch which direction he's coming from. If Coyote is approaching you from the outside, beware of this master of illusion. Coyote may put you in his spell and take you to a briar patch to pick berries. It will be a painful lesson if you follow him. Coyote reverse can appear in your life as a supposed all-knowing teacher, a scam artist, a get-quick business partner, a rare coin door-to-door salesperson, or a femme fatale. Coyote is not the recommended business partner or lover. Contrary Coyote may signal a time when everything you touch backfires. All your jokes may be exploding in your face. And in the reverse position, Coyote also signals a time to be aware of the intention of others. Someone else's trick may be on you. Whenever Coyote reversed has come up, it could be coming from any direction. Remember, this jokester is always wild. And right now in life, we're all being, there's a bunch of tricksterish stuff going on. So, politics and world events, and sometimes in our own personal lives because of world events and politics. So, which sets up situations. So y'all need to, act on stuff. Quit thinking about it and do it. And but be careful along the way, because there's a trickster out there. We're all being scammed.
We are. I agree. We just want to believe so badly. So
Yep.
we pick something and go with it and say, yeah, I've got to believe in that. Which sometimes,
And I want to believe in that.
yeah,
You want to believe that it's true. It really does. And that's where the trickster comes in. It's like, so, and that old saying, knowledge is power, is true.
it is.
Like, and, when I was in jail, we'd hear a whisper that the guards were going to come into our cell block and dump our bunks. That meant everything was going to get dumped upside down. Very possible, some of us had a shoebox. We kept all our worldly possessions in, which wasn't much. But so you kind of packed things on you, so they wouldn't toss it across the cell block. So if you knew in advance that they were coming, you prepared. But if they just come in at 7:00 one morning and dumping bunks, but knowledge is power. So that's where trickster comes in. the trickster, the coyote is going, hey, be aware.
That's right. Be aware. Be aware. I like what F Kitty says. She says, don't be stupid, don't be lazy, because we have a big trick incoming with bad intention.
Yep, and we need to act on what we know is right, and
Yep.
Antelope came in to save us, and we need to act on, to save ourselves and other folks. We need to pass that along. But mostly, it's self-serving for whatever we do, but it goes into the collective.
It does.
If you're doing something to help the earth, then it's I'm mowing the lawn, I'm keeping up something, I'm growing a garden, or I'm doing something, but that you're doing something for the collective too. You're using the correctly the assets that the Creator has given us and that are readily available on planet Earth.
Right.
Oops.
Anyway, yeah, I do think you're right. But anyway, I want to give a big shout out to everybody that was here tonight. F Kitty, Baby Doll Diaz, thank you for coming tonight. Off the hook. Let's see. Who else do we got? Witchy Moon was in the house. I remember seeing Chloe. Chloe was here. Big shout out to you. I know Scotty Boy was here, and Susie Q, Witchy Moon, and boom. I don't know. Savage Lee was listening tonight. Thank you all for being here tonight. What a great show this was. Hope you learned a little bit of knowledge and history. Hope you liked the story. And F Kitty says, will Hawkeye be having a show tonight?
Oh, I probably will. I'm going to go tinkle and get some, coffee and sign on.
Okay, that sounds like a really good idea. I'd like to join you, but you know what? I got to get to bed. I got to go to work tomorrow. Full moon blessings. Yes, there was a full moon tonight, and with partial eclipse. Hope you guys got to see it. We were too busy doing the show. Maybe I'll watch it on somebody's YouTube channel somewhere. I'm sure it'll be on. Anyway, and with that, remember, everybody, you need to go out, do something nice for somebody, do something nice for yourself. That's important. Take care of yourself. Watch out for yourself, just like the cards say. Run away like the horse. Be protective and be squirrely of a coyote, because there's a lot of tricks going on out there. So
and use your own internal power. Accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the power from the Creator. We all have the power. So when things come up in our lives, or the chaos starts to cram us, we have the power to overcome it. We have the power to just sit down and think about the horse and think about these things and make sure that the trickster ain't trying to trick us. But we have the power within us, and we can find, the way out, if you will.
Yep. Baby Doll, how do I find Hawkeye? And his link is in the description below, or you can just look up David Null, and it'll be up there somewhere. But anyway, the link is in the description below. You can find him that way, and or just look up David Null. Put it in the search, and there you go. I see F Kitty just did it. And there you go. Thank you, F Kitty, for doing that. And like I said, there's lots of stuff going on, and you're gonna have. We were doing some. You did a show earlier today. I see that. I didn't get a chance to listen. I was busy today, really busy today. So, but anyway,
24 hours ago. Yeah.
Oh, maybe it was 24 hours. I know I woke up this morning and it was up there and it said live, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's 4:30 in the morning. You're still live.
Yeah. I didn't start until 2. I was sitting here bored and I was like, dog. So I figured if I got on, I'd get sleepy. And then 3 hours later, I was still at it. So, you know me.
Yeah. Some shaman basics. That's what was good. But anyhow, anyway, everybody, remember, do something nice for yourself. Catch David over on his show in a little bit and get yourself a cup of coffee. And if you're a late nighter, he'll have some great stuff for you. So with that, everyone, remember, go out and do something and be the frequency you want to receive. Love you all. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.